Hey guys, Tom here from the Investing with Tom YouTube channel. Welcome back to the channel. If you enjoyed today's video, hit like, hit subscribe, and that way you can see future videos as well. So this is going to be the fourth and final video in the Mohnish Movember series, a month-long series I've been doing right through November, where each week we talk about an investing lesson or an investing topic at least to do with Mohnish Pabrai. Meanwhile, I try to clone his moustache, and we're also raising money for a good cause, that being the Movember Foundation, focused specifically on mental health and also suicide prevention. So if you're interested in donating to that cause, that will be the first link down in the description below. Now, we're actually not quite at the end of November yet. As of filming this, it's Saturday the 28th of November. So I think as sort of the final thing to finish this Mohnish Movember series off, I'm probably going to be doing a live stream on Monday night. So Monday will be the 30th of November. I'm probably looking to do a live stream sometime around 6 p.m. New Zealand time. So definitely come along to that if you're interested. I'll just make it kind of a Q&A session, I think. So come along, ask your questions, and that'll be kind of the final hurrah for this Mohnish Movember series until we maybe do it again next year. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I put up a poll here on YouTube on my community page, and basically I asked you what sort of topics you'd like to see me cover in this Mohnish Movember series. Now, the winner of that poll was Mohnish Pabrai's best and worst investments, and that's what I've been doing videos on over the past couple of weeks. But the next one after that was going through an overview of Mohnish Pabrai's portfolio. Now, many of you may be wondering why this video is even required after some of my previous videos on 13F updates, where I go through Mohnish Pabrai's quarterly filings, which show us his US investments. Well, Mohnish Pabrai has a lot of investments outside of the US. And a couple of weeks ago, I was watching a video here on YouTube from Brad Kellner. Brad gets plenty of shout outs in my videos lately, but well deserved. And basically, Brad was going through this website he'd found called TIKR Terminal. And what TIKR Terminal does is it basically puts together all of the different filings of from large investors and gurus that you want to follow. But not only 13Fs, filings from all sorts of different countries. So if they invest in a country internationally and that country has regulations that say, you know, if you own 3 or 5% of a company, you have to file that publicly. Basically, this website was compiling all of those filings together, and it allowed us, in the case of Mohnish Pabrai, to see many more investments than what we simply see in his 13F. Now, this isn't a TIKR Terminal sponsored video or anything like that, but I'll leave a link down to it in the description if you're interested in checking that out. It's really useful if you follow any investors that do a lot of their investing overseas, especially people like Mohnish Pabrai, Guy Spear to some extent as well. Lee Liu at Himalaya Capital, he had a lot of other sort of holdings on there outside of his 13Fs as well. So today I want to cover all of the investments in there from Mohnish Pabrai, do a bit of a deep dive on each individual company. So let's get into it, and I hope you enjoy. Just before we get into that, though, we are going to do our usual sort of Movember fundraising update. So again, timestamps will be along the bottom if you just want to jump forward to the actual portfolio of Mohnish Pabrai, but let's get into that now. So since the last video, we have had lots more generous donations. So the first one we had is from Kalichi. I hope I'm not butchering your name there. They say, love your content and I'm learning so much from each video. Wish I could just take the knowledge in your head and transfer it to my head. LOL. That would be pretty handy, I would hope. $9 from an anonymous supporter. Hey Tom, awesome initiative and great work. Keep it up. Taking the donations to 1,500 even. Awesome. $30 donation from Kate. Thank you, Kate. $56 donation from Andrew Brown. Do you to keep it for 6 months? I'm definitely not keeping it for 6 months, but maybe if like Mohnish Pabrai just turned up and donated like 10 grand himself, I might consider doing that. But that's not going to happen. I should say I actually did a sort of a podcast interview type thing with Andrew just the other day, so I'll put a link in the description to that also. $50 from Queenie. Tom, keep up the great work with your YouTube channel. Shout out to Queenie. We've collaborated on a video before. Go check out Queenie's channel. $20 from an anonymous supporter, $44 from Andrew Latenda. Andrew also has a YouTube channel. Go check him out as well. And a $30 donation from myself for the previous Mohnish Movember video. So just as a reminder, I'm donating all of the ad revenue from these videos. So watch it to the end, like it, share it with a friend. All that stuff kind of helps to build up the ad revenue for these videos. And for the previous video, we raised or generated a little under $30 of YouTube ad revenue. So Again, bit of Swedish rounding, pushed up to $30, and that takes the total raise so far to $1,730. We've absolutely smashed the initial target of $1,000, so I'm extremely thankful for that, and it's great to see so much money going to an awesome cause. So in terms of Mohnish Pabrai's actual holdings, again, this is just everything that he's had to file publicly for. So we're still probably not going to capture everything that is in his portfolio if he has investments in large overseas companies where he hasn't built up a big enough ownership stake to warrant legal filings. Those still aren't going to show up here. And I will say that I've seen writings from Mohnish Pabrai mentioning other stocks that we're also not going to talk about in here. But these are the ones that are certainly confirmed in that previous filing where he's written about, other investments. That also included things like Graphtech, which he's since sold. So, these are the ones that are still kind of confirmed, and I think that's what we'll stick to for today's video. So let's get a couple of them out of the way very quickly because you'll probably be familiar with some of these already. So the first one is Micron. This is a very well-known sort of US holding of Mohnish Pabrai. It's a semiconductor business. It's well outside of my circle of competence, and I probably can't tell you all that much about it, but he has owned that for a couple of years now. And I'll put up a screenshot here just to show some of the people with the highest percentage portfolio allocation to Micron as well. And you'll probably see a few familiar names. You'll see people like Pabrai, obviously. You'll see David Tepper. You'll see Lee Lu at Himalaya Capital. So there's a lot of well-known value investors in that stock as well as Mohnish Pabrai. Now the next company we have is Seritage Growth Properties. Again, I've spoken about this pretty extensively on the channel before, so go and check out some of my previous SRG videos if you're interested in hearing about that. But the first one that's kind of new and I haven't spoken about on the channel before, and that's not kind of an American holding, is a business called Nice Holdings Co. Limited, which is actually a financial company in South Korea. So Nice stands for National Information and Credit Evaluation Inc. Again, these finance type businesses are still kind of outside of my circle of competence, but I'll tell you some of the basic stats for what this business does. Now, basically they launched a credit information service in Korea in 1989. Since then, they've expanded into some other areas as well. So they operate ATMs, credit cards. They also have an asset management business. And in terms of some of the basic financials for the company, they're trading at about 12 times earnings. As far as I can tell, that's actually on slightly depressed earnings to what they have done in the past. So if you normalize it, perhaps they're closer to like a 6 PE, 12% return on equity, and trading at about 0.7 times book value. So that's some of the basic stats of the company. Again, it's kind of outside of my area of expertise, so I haven't done a deep dive on it or anything like that. But what I can tell you from watching some of Mohnish Pabrai's previous talks is he has been hunting in South Korea for investments for a little while now. He's done several talks now where he's spoken about the stock markets in places like Japan and South Korea, and even Turkey to a lesser extent, where he's focused on, what has the stock market done relative to GDP growth. You have, countries like America where GDP has grown a lot over the past several decades. The stock market has also grown a lot to reflect that. But when you look at a country like Korea, for example, GDP has grown really well, the country has become more prosperous, but the stock market really hasn't gone anywhere. And he thinks that there are some pretty good arguments to be had that, there's potentially a lot of good cheap stocks in South Korea. So interesting to see Nice Holdings Co. in Mohnish Pabrai's portfolio. So let's move on to the next one. Now, the next stock we see in Mohnish Pabrai's portfolio is actually an Indian investment. He, for several years now, has been looking to invest more and more money into India. And this business goes by the name of Edelweiss Financial Services Limited. And this is actually a stock that Mohnish Pabrai has written about a little bit. And this is basically what I was able to find out. So Mohnish has a cost basis of around 110 Indian rupees in this particular company. And he made that investment probably sometime towards the end of 2019, a stock that he's been in for probably around a year roughly, and it's a business he's actually down on at the moment. So currently the stock is trading at about 70 Indian rupees per share, relative to Pabrai's purchase price of around 110 rupees. So the business, as the name suggests, is an Indian financial services company. They basically have three main sort of business segments. Those are loans or credit facilities, again asset management, just like Nice Holdings that we spoke spoke about earlier, and also insurance. And Pabrai basically says that Edelweiss is a business that he has sort of admired from afar for a very long time, but he's always resisted the temptation to invest simply because the price has been too high. Now, there's a couple of things that happened in the last year that have brought the price down quite significantly. It allowed Pabrai to build up a stake in the company, but then unfortunately for Pabrai, the business kind of kept going down and down and down in terms of the stock price at least. So these are a couple of the things that had happened. So there was quite a major rumor about margin calls actually, and margin calls specifically for insiders within Edelweiss who had significant ownership stakes in the business. Now, there was sort of fear in the market that all these shares were just going to get dumped, they were going to get sold as fast as possible, it was going to crash the price down. And it was sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy where, those rumors forced the price down because there was a lot of expected selling, which drove, a lot of selling from people that weren't getting margin calls because they were kind of fearful of these big drops. Now, turns out that there were actually no margin calls at all. No insiders were forced to sell, and some of them were actually buying shares at the time. But nonetheless, it sent the stock down a lot. So remembering that Mohnish Pabrai's purchase price is around 110 rupees per share, it actually went all the way down to 30 rupees per share. So the business was down significantly for a long period of time. At one point, Pabrai was down more than 70% on that investment. It's now back up to about 70 rupees per share, so it's gone from 30 back up to 70, but he still has a purchase price of 110. And that's what Pabrai had to say. So Edelweiss used to be recognized as a great growing pie or growing business, but has been taken out back and shot. It will be back. Okay, let's keep moving. So the next stock that we have here is a business called Sunteck Realty Corp. And this is a stock that Pabrai has actually spoken quite publicly about. I'll leave a link down in the description, which should take you to a presentation that he did to, I believe, some Peking University students where he actually talked about Sunteck Realty. And in that video, he actually spoke about a bet that he currently has going with Guy Spear. Now, he, again, sort of set up this bet with Guy Spear. It's a 12-year long bet, so it's still got a fair way to go yet. He set up on the 14th of October 2018, and he basically was having this argument with Guy Spear, or this disagreement, or whatever you want to call it, basically saying that Guy Spear was invested in MasterCard, which is a phenomenal business, but Pabrai is not in the business of finding good businesses. He's in the business of finding good investments. And at the time, he thought MasterCard looked very expensive, but he found this probably lower quality business with lower quality management, but called Sunteck Realty. But it was so cheap that he thought this was going to be a much better investment than MasterCard. So he set up this bet with Guy Spear. I'll put up a screenshot of it here so you can see what's going on there. But he's basically saying over the next 12 years, he's sort of taking on Guy Spear and saying that Sunteck is going to outperform MasterCard. So here's the story of the Sunteck investment. Basically, Mohnish Pabrai had made his first investment in Sunteck, not in 2018, but actually much earlier in 2016. And you'll see in that bet that I believe Pabrai has a cost basis in that bet of a little over 300 Indian rupees per share. He actually bought his stake initially at 100 rupees. So he's up significantly on this position at the moment. And here's basically what happened. So back in 2016, the Indian government went through what was called demonetization. And demonetization was essentially the process of trying to eliminate a bunch of kind of under-the-table cash transactions. So basically what they offered for a period of time is that people could go into a bank, give away these sort of old notes and be given new bank notes and all this kind of stuff. And one of the interesting things in India that Pabrai describes is that a lot of the real estate transactions actually involved a large amount of cash. So, the buyers would write a check for some portion of the purchase price for these real estate properties, and then they would do sort of the rest of it under the table with cash. And there were a few real estate firms that, were taking on these sorts of deals with open arms. And there were other real estate firms that were more sort of playing things by the book, Sunteck Realty Corp being one of them, and not accepting those big cash transactions. So once demonetization occurred, there was a lot of fear in the real estate sector that real estate prices were just going to collapse, and a lot of real estate firms actually did go out of business, particularly the ones that had been dealing in cash to a large extent, whereas the remaining businesses such as Sunteck that were sort of playing things by the book, they were perfectly fine. They were still healthy, profitable businesses and so on, but their stock prices got extremely depressed. And when Pabrai looked at Sunteck back in 2016, basically what he found is he found a business with a market cap of only $200 million, a very sort of small company in stock market terms. And they had one project with 60 finished apartments worth around $500 million, and the business had no debt. So just with this one project that Sunteck had going, that real estate was worth sort of 2.5 times what the current market cap of Sunteck was. And that wasn't the only development that Sunteck had. They had many on top of that. So once he started doing some basic maths, he was able to figure out that the intrinsic value, or at least the real estate assets of Sunteck Realty, was likely many multiples of that $200 million market cap. So he basically started buying as many shares as humanly possible, to the point where he now owns 9.99% of the business, which is the maximum that he is allowed to own. So after purchasing Sunteck for about 100 rupees per share, it went all the way up to about 500 at one point, and now it's down to around 300. But he's still holding that business. He's very happy to own it for a long period of time, and he's holding about a 3x return on it currently. So let's get moving. The next business we're going to talk about is Rain Industries, which is again one of Mohnish Pabrai's fairly well-known actually Indian investments. So Rain was a business that Pabrai invested in back in 2015. It's an Indian chemical company, and he first was sort of exposed to this business basically by someone just sending him a 10 or 12 page write-up on Rain Industries. And if you look actually on the very front page of that write-up, you will see two numbers. You'll see the stock price at the time, back when Pabrai first read this write-up, and they also put in a target price of what they thought that Rain Industries was worth. And when you looked at the discrepancy between those two numbers, it's sort of, as Pabrai described it, it looks like someone had just put a 0 on the current stock price as the target. So got him kind of excited, and he started doing some digging into this business. And basically it was a really well written report. If everything in the report was factual, then he was certainly in agreement that this was a really attractive opportunity. So his job was basically just to go out and verify all the facts, and then about 3 hours later he was loading the boat with Rain Industries shares. He was buying it as fast as he possibly could. So here are some of the stats for Rain Industries back in 2015. Basically, the business was selling for about $180 million. That was the market cap at the time. And Pabrai managed to see that typical earnings were kind of volatile year to year, but he could see the business earning from anywhere from sort of $100 million a year up to $250 million a year. So you're earning 100 to 250 and you're paying 180 for it. So potentially a PE of less than 1, maybe a PE of slightly over 1 if they had poor quality earnings. So he invested a lot of money in the business, and if you look at the Rain Industries stock chart, it looks crazy. So from about 2015 when Pabrai purchased his stake, and the years following that, it very quickly actually did like a 10x. It went up a lot, then came down 60 or 70%, and I believe Pabrai has mentioned that he actually bought more a little bit on the way down. But he currently still has about a 3x on that stock, so it's got a crazy looking stock chart, but nonetheless it's still working out pretty well overall. The business has faced some headwinds recently, and that is one of the reasons why the stock did come down significantly, other than just the price moving up really rapidly, which will often be followed by a little bit of a decline. So Pabrai basically describes some of the issues that Rain Industries has been having as sort of a perfect storm. So firstly, you had import restrictions by the Indian Supreme Court. This is an Indian chemical company, and they were obviously reliant on some of those imports, so that did restrict some of the success of the business a little bit. It took them 9 months to flush out a lot of high-cost inventory, as Pabrai again describes it, and he thinks they're back on track, and he's still very happy to own the company. So that is Rain Industries. It was a really successful investment in a very short space of time initially, and it's still a pretty successful investment really when you look at it as a 3x in sort of 5 years, which is a pretty attractive return in just about anyone's book. Okay, so let's look at the final investment that you will see for Mohnish Pabrai on TIKR Terminal when you go on there. Now, this one's kind of interesting. So back when Brad did his video looking at some of these Pabrai investments on TIKR Terminal, there were actually two very closely related Turkish companies, and I'm going to talk about one of them because now only one of them actually exists on TIKR Terminal, so I'm not quite sure whether he's potentially sold out of one or what's kind of going on there, but we're only seeing one there now, and that is a business, again, in Turkey called Reysas Logistics. I don't know if I'm saying that name correctly or not, but I'll put the stock chart and the ticker and everything on the screen here so you can see that. Now, this is actually a company that Pabrai described again in one of his talks. He didn't mention the company specifically, but we can pretty well figure out from some of the numbers and some of the things he was saying that this is the business that he was talking about. So again, I'll leave a link down in the description to that if you're interested in checking that out. Now, basically, this Turkish business is the parent company of a REIT, and that REIT was actually the other company that was previously showing up on Ticker Terminal. So it looked like initially Pabrai actually had shares in both the parent company and the subsidiary. Not sure whether that's changed, but we've kind of only got the parent company showing up at the moment. So let me tell you what was happening in the subsidiary, which again was driving probably a very high percentage of these returns. Basically, the subsidiary, which the ticker is RYGYO, again I'll put that on the screen here, is a Turkish REIT and logistics company. So they basically have warehousing facilities. And when Pabrai looked at the investment, the market cap was about 30 million Turkish lira. That's sort of the currency in Turkey, which I just found out yesterday. They were trading at about 30 million, and he believed just the real estate assets alone were worth anywhere from 300 million to 1 billion Turkish lira. So, and the worst case scenario, he thought it was trading at 1/10 of the real estate value. And the best case scenario, he thought it was trading at even a much larger discount again. He thought he was buying a billion Turkish lira in real estate assets for 30 million. So huge discount. So when Pabrai saw this, he basically started buying as much as possible, but he ran into a couple of issues here. So remember, when Pabrai typically makes investments, he's generally either making a 5 or 10% sort of portfolio allocation, and a 10% bet for Pabrai at the moment is probably around $40 million US. So there's no way that he's going to be able to put $40 million US into a business that is trading at 30 million Turkish lira. 30 million Turkish lira is worth right around $4 million US. So he's not going to be able to put much money into this at all. He's not going to get anywhere near his $40 million allocation that he would ideally like to make. But nonetheless, he bought as much as possible. He bought a large enough stake in the business at least to file reporting, which didn't take very long for him to do because he's trying to put so much money into it. And basically what we saw happen after Pabrai purchased into that business is the stock has gone up about 10x very quickly, kind of similar to Rain Industries. It came back down a little bit, but he's still probably got like a 5 or 6x in this company. Again, I'll put the exact numbers up on the screen here so you can kind of see that chart. But nonetheless, very spectacular return very quickly. He just can't get a huge amount of money into that business as all to make it be a huge sort of needle mover in the overall portfolio. So there you have it. Those are all of the publicly filed investments from all around the world, actually, for Mohnish Pabrai, rather than just the US like we generally focus on. So hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please hit like and hit subscribe. If you're interested in donating to Movember, the link will be the first link down in the description below. And I'll hope to see you all at the live stream on Monday evening as well. So come along, ask plenty of questions, and that will be kind of the final hurrah for Mohnish Movember. So that's all from me today, and I will see you in the next one.
And here they come. The New Zealand side in base, led by Stephen Fleming, with the facial hair, Matthew Sinclair, Styrus, Hamish Marshall, McMillan, Cairns. Look at Hamish Marshall in the background. What an unbelievable look that is. Goodness me, what is he on? Andre Adams, Jeff Wilson, Kyle Mills, Daryl Tuffy, and the local boy Lou Vincent is back in the squad, 12th man. No Vittori and no Astle. What a good look.